Switching over to our committee of the whole meeting then, and I'll call that meeting to order. And again, it was a published agenda for everyone to see. Is there any declaration of interest to county councils to the committee of the whole agenda? Okay, if one does arise, you can declare at that time. We have sort of a shorter version of a committee of the whole compared to our last meeting, and so there are no delegations or no items for discussion. So there is a consent agenda, and it is moved by Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Mackey. Any of those items wish to be pulled separately?
Mr. Warden?
Go ahead.
I'd like to pull item E, which is the correspondence from the town of Blue Mountains Countywide Waste Management Program.
Okay, I'll mark it down here then. So, okay. Is there anything else wish to be pulled from the consent agenda from county councilors? Okay, I hear none. So then, again, it was moved by O'Leary, second by Councillor Mackey. Anybody opposed to the consent agenda? Okay, that is carried. So then moving on for items for direction and discussion, we have, it's moved by Councillor Hicks and Councillor Millen, and this is with regards to the municipal modernization service delivery review results. And this is going to be discussed with our CAO. So Madam CAO.
Thanks everyone. If you bear with me for just 1 second, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Maybe. There we are. Okay. Everyone see that okay? All right. I wanted to provide council with just an overview of the results of the 2 operational reviews that were undertaken earlier this year. Council will recall that we received a $90,000 grant from the province under their municipal modernization funding program to take a look at these 2 service delivery areas within the county. The goals of the operational reviews were to assess the efficiency and effectiveness of the work of those 2 departments and their processes, to take a look at whether the work that is being carried out is being carried out in the appropriate places. Should human resources and finance both have responsibility for all of the things that they do, or should some of that work be carried out in the actual client departments and vice versa? And the final piece was to take a look at the technology that we're using or the technology that we could use and the impact that that would have on our ability to deliver services. For my mind, the bottom line was really, can we improve our outcomes or access better information to support decision making or reduce our costs? Are we as prepared as we can be for the future? And I think the 2 consultants, they did an awful lot of engagement across the whole corporation. They talked to all of the staff in each of the 2 affected departments, as well as in the client departments who rely on those folks to help them every day. So I'll start off with a little bit about the human resources operational review. Council will be aware that staffing costs, salary and wages, benefits make up 36% of the county's budget. So that was one of the reasons why this particular area was selected, because it has the potential to have a real impact. The consultants felt that we really do, compared to others, have a complex environment. And from an HR perspective, we have 7 collective agreements that we're responsible for and relatively few tools to manage these things. Moving forward into the future will require us to change from a transactional way of working to more of a strategic, and from reacting to things to really more leading the change that we want to see and becoming more proactive in our efforts. By moving in this direction, they felt that we could see savings in labor relations, benefits administration, and employee development costs. or I think another way to state that would be to see, greater rewards from the efforts that are being put into those areas now, which are actually quite extensive. So their recommendations were to reposition the Human Resources Department within the corporation. So we'll be returning to a standalone department rather than the corporate services department that we have currently. And there is a recruitment for a director of HR that's underway right now. It closed yesterday. They recommended that we restructure the team to address workload issues and to hire a payroll supervisor as soon as possible, and that is included in the 2021 budget. I think their overarching recommendation was that we develop a strategy, a human resources strategy, to implement all of the smaller recommendations, to do that in a thoughtful and effective way, and really to move us into the future. So this is looking at things like automating some processes and allowing employees to undertake some self-service, to allow people to and in many ways do some of the work for themselves, which is a common practice in many large organizations. Looking at scheduling, you can appreciate that paramedic services, long-term care, transportation, all of those have some or all of their work on a 24/7, 365 schedule. And scheduling is a really significant, has a significant impact on both the effectiveness of our operation, but also on employee engagement and morale. So we want to be moving forward with making improvements to scheduling wherever we can. Labor relations and negotiations, collective agreements, that's another area of focus for us. And then finally, I think uniting all of our staff under a single Grey County identity and culture of excellence. Everyone needs to be clear about what it means to work for Grey County, the expectations that we have for our staff, and the fact that we're all moving forward together. Finance, if I switch over to the finance department, again, wouldn't be a surprise to all of you that every decision that we make as a county really has some financial aspect or impact to it. As well, there's really no margin for error in the finance department. As such, then there's really a complete reliance on the finance team by the other departments. And that puts a lot of pressure on the finance department, but also a tremendous workload. They don't have a lot of tools that some organizations of a similar size would have that would allow them to, again, automate some of those manual processes or enable greater self-sufficiency from the client departments, or even to provide management level information. A lot of these questions that come up need to be resolved by people really digging into the numbers and taking a lot of data then to turn it into management information, and that's a pressure and a time consideration that keeps us from maybe doing as much of that as we would like to be able to. So from the BDO did this report, and their recommendations again were to realign corporately, to implement some critical policies and procedures. The department needs to be able to handle those myriad of one-off information requests in an efficient way, try to reduce the amount of paper handling that happens over there by moving to more of electronic document management, balancing and realigning internal workload, both to ensure that there's redundancy and succession planning, but just to make sure that, staff, nobody's feeling overwhelmed in that department. And then moving to more of a forecasting and variance analysis model for the line departments. All of this kind of feeds into that last bullet point about building financial literacy and more self-reliance in the client departments for understanding their numbers and being able to be more partners, if you will, with the finance department. The county does need to invest in a purchase order system and a budget module for the financial system. as we grow and change the requirements on us by the province and other funding partners, it really becomes apparent that to satisfy their requirements in a timely manner, we just need some extra tools to speed up those processes. So in conclusion, with Council's support for the 2021 budget, we can address those critical workload issues in both departments. A few software tools would make a huge difference to our ability to manage growth and complexity efficiently. And we are either going to move forward with those in this year's budget or have started the process to put resources away so that we can get those tools in the next couple of years. The consultants were all united, as am I, that the commitment and the work ethic of our staff is second to none. We have a great foundation from which to move forward. So I wanted to thank all of the staff who contributed their time and expertise to helping the consultants to prepare these two reports. I'm excited for the opportunity to put some strategies in place and move forward to a really bright future. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thanks, Madam CEO, and that's definitely important, as you noted, about how great staff we do have, and that's good that the consultants sort of see that as well. So there it is, County Councillors. Do we have any questions to this report? I can't see the screen, so Madam Clerk.
I'm actually going to ask the CAO just to stop sharing her screen.
That's right. Yeah, just thank you. Go. Thanks.
Okay. I can see everyone. I
Okay.
see Councillor Potter.
Okay, I'll start with him. Go ahead, Councillor Potter.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the report. And no doubt about it, we know how hard the staff works. I just wondered, I didn't see any costs or savings attached to any of the financial implications. And I'm sure some of these things will result in savings, but some of them will have costs. And I just wondered, will that be in the budget documents, or when will we see those?
Yes, the two positions that we're moving forward with are in the 2021 budget. So those are costed, as well as the potential investments for those other software tools.
All right. I see Councillor Millen has a question, just popped up on my screen. Go ahead, Councillor Millen.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Warden. Kim, I'm wondering, HR has been a difficult practice for a lot of the lower tiers over the years, just by the nature of the small operations that we tend to run relative to the county. I'm wondering, is there an opportunity, given the recommendations from the HR consultant, for some, I don't know how to phrase it other than some trickle down help to the lower tiers from this reorganization?
Certainly through you, Mr. Warden. Councillor Milne, I think once the new director is in place and has had a little bit of time to get acclimatized, I think that there is a real opportunity there. The human resources, as you've rightly noted, it can be quite complex, especially given the amount of legislation that people need to be familiar with. There's an awful lot of rules and regulations to balance out. We've assisted the member municipalities through this department, I think, on a more casual way. When people asked, there was help. There was an HR group struck the last year or so, where they met periodically throughout the year to discuss changes in legislation and best practices. But I do agree that there's an opportunity to formalize that and to do more of it. I think it only makes sense from an efficiency perspective that where we can do some sharing and some interpretation for folks, that would be to everyone's benefit.
Thank you. And just a follow-up comment there. I know over the years there has been some good assistance provided by the county, locally or very locally here in Southgate, we have a Cracker Jack employee now that looks after our HR stuff. But, you know, it wasn't always thus, and it may not always be thus. But, you know, to have the resource at the county for our staff to work with, I think would be very helpful in the future. Thank you.
Yes. If I may, Mr. Wooden, I think that really it's that idea that there's interpretation. Human resources issues often have many sides to them, and the answers and the way forward for everyone involved is not always a straight path. So my heart goes out to people that are trying to have responsibility for the whole HR function and doing that on their own. You'd be having a lot of heart-to-heart conversations with yourself, I think. So.
Oh, it's good words, Councillor Millen, in the sense that I know probably all of us have reached out to the county's HR staff at different times, for sure. It's always good to know that they're there to help. Okay, other comments from county councillors? Madam Clerk, anything else that's being raised? All right.
Sir.
Again, that was moved by Councillor Deputy Warden Hicks and second by Councillor Millen. Is anybody opposed to that motion? All right, that is carried. Thank you. So then moving on now to the financial corporate budget overview and budget report by Director Wepler. We have it moved by Councillor Patterson and second by Councillor O'Leary. It's on the floor. So good morning, Mr. Wepler.
Morning, Warden and County Council. Yeah, I'm just going to walk through this report and just highlight some of the areas and then try to answer as many questions as I can. Okay.
Let's take your time.
The 2021 corporate budget overview and background is being presented in order that council members are aware of the overall 21 funding requirements to meet the proposed budget is developed by staff, and what's being proposed right now is a net levy budget increase of 2.18%. And at the Committee of the Whole 2021 budget review meeting has been scheduled for January 29th. So we'll have the detailed budget package available, and we'll be each of the directors and departments will be presenting their budgets and their impacts at that time on that date. 2021 draft budget has been prepared to maintain services that support each of the department's mandates and legislative requirements and deliver on Grey County's slated priorities and expectations for service levels. As well, the 2021 draft budget contains service levels enhancements to maintain or and to improve service levels, and these are summarized later in the report, which I'll speak to. So the 2021 budget as proposed by staff and based on the most current information contemplates an estimated levy requirement of just over $62 million, which is an estimated overall net levy increase of 2.18%. That is taking into consideration an estimate of about 1.3 million in assessment growth. And so assessment growth is the sum of all the changes that have happened in the county. It's tax-based during the 2020 year, so that includes new construction, major renovations, demolitions, and property value appeals. So this revenue growth of $1,270,800 is been incorporated into this estimate of a 2.18%. Based on MPAC's control totals that we pulled off their website on November 17th. So the final return roll is anticipated in December. So we'll have the final numbers then, and this number will be updated if it has changed. So and then therefore I should say too, if that number does change, goes up or down, it will impact that 2.18% that we've indicated in this report. The 2021 budget, provincial funding and cost sharing in 2019 in-year and future budget impacts were announced by the Ontario government. There has been a number of changes announced in the implementation of those over the next from 2020 to 2022, and I'll just highlight some of the changes that were announced and updates that have been provided by the province. In regards to the health unit, the province had announced that a new public health entity was to be formed, comprised of the Grey, Bruce, Huron, and Perth counties, governed by an autonomous board of health. The cost sharing arrangement with municipalities moved from a 70-30 provincial municipal cost share in 2020 from the previous 75-25. In recognition of the resources needed by public health units to be able to respond to the COVID-19, the province announced that it was extending the one-time mitigation funding to 2021. They had provided that as well in 2020. So the Grey Bruce Public Health Unit has indicated that with the receipt of this funding announcement received from the Ministry of Health, that there will be a 0% increase to the county portion of funding for 2021. This announcement defers the estimated cost sharing municipal impact of just over $1 million until 2022, with Grey County share being about $600,000. Social assistance, Ontario Works and Employment Services. The provincial modernization of social services has had an impact on the social services budget. Ontario Works provincial funding for administration has been frozen at the 2018 actual expenditure levels. And this is remaining this way for 2019, 2020, and 2021 budget years. The Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services has confirmed that the 21 budget is being kept at 2020 baselines to provide stability and opportunity to respond to shifting priorities and client needs. Staff have worked on reducing expenditures in the Ontario Works budgets in order to try and meet ministry expenditure levels. Employment transformation and the centralizing of intakes are expected to impact the Ontario Works administration budget by a minimum of 20% reduction in funding in 2022. There's very limited details on that yet, so we don't know a lot about that, but that's the number that's been thrown out there. Childcare funding changes were announced in 2019 to be phased in over 3-year periods. And on January 1st, 2021, CMSMs were required to cost share expansion plan operating funding at a rate of 80-20 provincial municipal share, and CMSMs will be required to cost share all administration funding at a rate of 50-50. The biggest part of that is the expansion funding, which was had been 100% funded in the past with no cost share. So for us, for the county maintain and utilize all the ministry's 2021 expansion funding of $961,000 and a municipal contribution of $234,300 will be required. So this funding, in addition to supporting the 361 new childcare spaces, have been created since 2017. There are several retrofit or expansion capital projects of schools to go forward in 2021. These will be seeking support from the county through the expansion funding. So. Transportation services, we've incorporated gas tax based on the allocation notice we've received, and then the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, or OSIF, the formula-based funding allocation has been included in the 2021 budget based on the 2020 allocation. As of this date, as of the date of this report, no announcement has received from the province relating to the 2021 OSIF formula-based program. So that is a budget risk if that program does get changed. But at this time, we've included it in the budget based on what we received last year. Service levels, new initiatives, and staffing level changes. The 21 budget has been drafted with additional resources to maintain and improve service levels, along with funding new initiatives. The following is a recap of some of the 2021 budget level changes. So under human resources, and as per the organizational review, funding has been included in the 21 budget to adjust resources to provide the level of strategic leadership necessary for the complex and changing needs of the county. Also, the budget includes the addition of a payroll and a benefit supervisor position to support payroll staff who also manage benefit issues and dealing with daily inquiries. Finance department funding has been included in the 21 budget to provide for the addition of a financial analyst in order to address staff's constant and consistent overtime. Economic development under community transportation, County Council endorsed that staff be directed to add the Grey Road 4 route between Durham, Hanover, and Walkerton in 2020. The cost to provide this service in 2021 has been budgeted at an estimated cost of about $93,600. Housing, budget expenditures of $76,000 have been incorporated in the 2021 budget to provide free public Wi-Fi internet services in the common areas of the 27 housing building sites. What we've included in the budget here is the annual operating cost for this internet service is about $33,000 from taxation. The capital component or the one-time cost for this is being proposed to be funded from reserves. Long-term care, the 2021 budget has been developed in response to a focus on direct resident care, human resources challenges in the sector, and infection prevention, with the following investments being included in, at an estimated cost of $388,800. So I've listed the various areas from dietary, laundry, personal support workers, et cetera, in here that have been added into those budgets. I think in total, there's about 9,700 hours that have been added to the 3 long-term care homes to address those issues and challenges they're having. Paramedic services, in order that response time enhancements can be made, the addition of a night shift to the Chatsworth EMS base has been included in the 2021 budget. The impact on the 21 budget for the additional staffing is estimated to be $700,000, so that's like a gross impact. What's being proposed by staff here as the ministry's 50-50 cost share is based on the paramedic services approved previous year's budget. So what we're proposing then is it won't be until 2022 that the actual ministry will start cost sharing in that. So we're going to fund half of that cost from reserves and then build in the county's portion of the cost sharing in 2021. So we won't be overtaxing in 2021 then when we know in 2022 that this will be cost shared. Transportation services, again, we're including the 1% per year for to address our asset management plan. And so that's about almost $600,000 that we've put in place for the construction, resurfacing, and minor capital budget. Under COVID, federal and provincial funding, we're basing our expenditures and funding levels based on what we've received notice on in 2020 and assuming that those will continue in 2021. Where COVID departmental specific funding isn't sufficient to fund those costs, we're allocating the federal provincial safe restart agreement, the phase 1 funding to those budgets. Based on what our history is to date and what we've included in the 2021 budget, then that between the departmental specific funding and that phase 1 funding, that there will be no budget impact and no taxation required. So, meetings, training, travel, and conferences. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, participation in meetings, training, workshops, and conferences has moved from an in-person to a virtual environment. Staff believe this will continue for at least the first half of 2021, and the cost for training, travel, conference budget lines have been reduced by an estimate of $188,000. If training, workshops, and conferences return in the manner that they've traditionally been delivered, this will have an impact on future budgets. Budget realignment. As part of the COVID-19 recovery efforts and the impact of this pandemic was having on Grey County businesses, economic development, tourism, communication, and Grey Ridge staff were realigned for better alignment of in-house expertise and resources. This realignment has been found to be advantageous and is being recommended by staff that these temporary changes be made permanent. So this has resulted in the following departmental staff structure changes. So we're moving a tourism specialist, a marketing and communication specialist to the communication department. The one Grey Roots media and communication coordinator to be reallocated to the communication department budget, and the one tourism partner and media relations specialist to be reallocated to the economic development departmental budget. So staff have drafted the 21 budget based on these recommended staffing structure changes, and I'm recommending reallocation of the 2021 budget and actual cost to provide a year-over-year budget comparison. These changes do not result in any overall funding changes to either of the budgets, but are being detailed in order that council is aware and endorses these budget realignments. So then in summary, the proposed budget as developed by staff and based on the most current information will require an additional $2.6 million to be raised from taxation, or an estimated net levy increase of, or an estimated levy increase of 4.35%. This 2021 budget levy increase has been estimated to be assisted with an additional $1,270,800 in new 2020 assessment growth. This then would in 2021 new budget net budgetary levy increase of 2.18%. In order to realize an overall net levy increase of less than the 2.18%, further budgetary reductions and or the use of one-time funding sources would be required. The estimated levy increase of 2.18 could change if the 2020 estimated assessment growth is not realized. And so that is once we get the final roll return from MPAC, that number will be confirmed. So, and just for council information, a 1% levy increase equates to approximately $610,800. So that's just trying to give you an overview on what staff have proposed and what we are planning to bring forward in January for council's review and each of the departmental's presentations. So that's my report. And we've done this report trying to get a feel for council and just so the local budgets always are asking too, what's the county looking at, so they can take that into perspective when they're building their own budgets as well. So that's why we try to bring this, give some advance notice here of what we're looking at. So.
Well, thanks, Kevin, and you do such a great job with the thoroughness of your reports. And just before I go to county councilors, I have a quick couple of questions with regards to the assessment amount. Could that go up? Is that based on September numbers, or when is that? Is that a possibility that growth could even be higher?
It could, and it could go down too. So it's like I said, what had been processed by MPAC by November 17th, when I pulled it off what they call Municipal Connect, MPAC's website, those are the numbers that were there at that time. So if there could be reductions if some appeal is processed or reconsideration is processed, it could go down as well, or and it could go up as like you said as well too, if something else got added. So it was the best information I had at the time, and so that's what I've put in. But it is a risk, and that's why I do identify it here. When you bring about that as well, I didn't mention it, but the 2021 budget year was to have a new reassessment values. 2020. That has been because of COVID, and they've delayed that. We don't know when we are going to see new values. So for 2021 budget purposes, if no one's made any physical changes or anything to their property, their assessment value should be the same for 2021, and then they shouldn't be seeing any reassessment shifts unless there's some kind of tax policy change that we make here, but that they would see anything different than just a true budgetary increase onto their tax.
And that's quite traditional how that comes back, when that number finally comes back, in the sense of that. Okay, I'm going to go to thanks, Kevin. Again, I'm going to go to county councilors. So somebody popped up there. I missed it, Madam Clerk. So do you have a list of?
Yep, I do. I have Councillor Millen and Councillor Soever.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And good morning, Kevin. It's always good to see you on the screen. I miss chatting with you at the breaks, I'm sure. Detroit is well on their way to winning the cup this year, I'm sure. They haven't lost a game yet. The question regarding the budget, I see you've suggested that there's about 9,700 hours of PSW time, or sorry, 2,738 hours of PSW added to the long-term care budget. Is the figure that you're going to use in that budgetary number for those hours, is that considered at the full-time employee rate, or is that at the contract rate? And I guess what I'm getting at is, are we confident that we can actually hire that many more hours, or do we continue to use contract suppliers?
Well, I'll start, and maybe Jennifer can add too, but way we've budgeted it, we budgeted that based on our current complement of full-time and part-time. That's how we budget based on that. if we don't budget for overtime, that we're going to have missed shifts. We don't budget significant for contract staff. We're budgeting based on the belief that we can fill these shifts will be filled. So it comes to twofold. So where we run into problems where we have people that are not reporting to work for various reasons, could be sick, family matters, etc. And we can't fill those shifts, and that's savings to the county. But when we can't fill those shifts with our own staff, or we have to fill them with our own staff that work overtime, or we have to go to contract staff, then you'll see those budget lines come into play. So we may be underspent on what we've budgeted for our salaries and benefit lines, but we'll be overspent on overtime or contracted services. But it's very difficult on a 24/7 to really estimate what those numbers are going to be and look like. And we've kind of look at our history and then make those assumptions, Councillor Milne.
Councillor Millen, do you have a follow-up to that?
Everything right, Jennifer?
Well, I'd love to hear from Jennifer as well.
Okay.
Sure, thank you. Through you, Mr. Warden. So it is a multifaceted approach as well. There's a lot of initiatives going on to work towards improving the number of skilled staff that are available in our area. And so there's partnerships happening with economic development and the colleges working on getting people into the healthcare field. So lots of those types of initiatives, strategies on workplace experience. And that's, again, where additional hours help support that. So if, as the workload increases, if we're able to support the staff with additional hours, it helps make the work experience more, the staff are better able to do the things that we need them to do, and the residents have a better experience and the staff have a better experience. Which is hopefully going to encourage people to stay in long-term care, to get into the healthcare field. So there's a number of different strategies in play. Some of them are more of a short-term strategy. Some of them are a longer-term strategy. And the hope is that them all working together will help us with the human resources shortage that we have. And the additional hours is one of those strategies.
Okay, any follow-up there, Councillor Millen?
Yeah, I did have a follow-up here, if I can just find it. Anyway, I can't find it here now, but it was in the council portion of the meeting earlier, in the report from long-term board of management. There was an amendment to one of the motions there that said that, we're going to recommend this budget to council during the budgetary process. But there was an amendment to that motion, and it said that staff would continue to review to see what reductions may be necessary to moderate the budget, so to speak. And that's not the exact wording, but that was the gist of it. And I'm wondering what efforts are being made to further review that, or where is the opportunities to reduce that budget? Because as I recall reading that number, or that budget, proposed budget in long-term care, there was a significant dollar increase from the current year's budget to next year's budget to deal with changes in long-term care, or anticipated changes in long-term care. That's a long-winded. There's a question in there somewhere.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Jennifer or Kevin. Jennifer?
Let me take this one.
Okay.
That amendment was something I put forward. We were still looking at these budgets and asking, permission from the committee if we could find something to reduce these budgets, that we'd incorporate them, so that if they saw a different number coming forward in the corporate package, that they understood what staff were doing. As well, we constantly are getting funding announcements or directions on funding, that if something that had come to us that could help reduce the budget as a funding announcement, that we could incorporate those And again, the committee would understand why we've made changes from what was proposed at that committee meeting versus what would be presented on January 29th.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just, I don't have a lot of faith in some of these announcements coming from the province that they're actually going to flow through, but we'll see. So anyway, thank you very much, both Kevin and Jennifer.
So just following up with that to Jennifer, the province announced that they were going to increase from what, 2.73 hours per resident to 4 hours per resident. Maybe this is carrying on with Councillor Millen. With that announcement, that was one of the recommendations that's coming out of that commission. Is there any thought, as what Councillor Millen said, funding that's going to follow along with that increased recommendation? Kevin or Jennifer?
Through you, Mr. Warden, we haven't heard details, and they have made that announcement that the province is working on that with, and I'm just trying to remember if it was a 2024 goal. So there hasn't been a lot more details on that.
So maybe that's something, as myself being on the AMO, MOU and executive, I'll try to tease that out a little bit more or see where that's at, because that is, if they're making that a directive, as Councillor Millen says, there should be funding that's sort of, you know, following along with that as well. Okay, moving on.
Mr. Warden,
yes?
I think the CAO had some comments also to provide on this particular item.
Okay, sorry, Madam CEO, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Moore, just to be clear for all of council, the question about staffing. And at the outset of this pandemic, staff were restricted to working at one particular long-term care facility, and that continues to today. So in some ways that does provide us a bit of an opportunity for people that were with us and were only having part-time hours. There may be an opportunity to utilize more of their time. But to Kevin's point, we don't budget for agency staff or overtime. We budget as if we could use our own people at their rate to fill these shifts. And that's always our goal, is to do that as much as we can.
Okay, thanks, Madam CEO. Councillor Swever, I think you were next, and then Councillor Robinson I see in the list, and maybe there's other ones too. Go ahead, Councillor Swever.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. A couple of things, and I brought this up previously last year as well. And I want to thank Kevin for all the work he's done. I know that there's a lot of work goes into preparing these budget documents. But the one thing I'd like to ask for is, you know, more discussion of revenue in the budget document. You know, as was evident from our discussions a few weeks ago at council, you know, council members need to have a better understanding of where the revenue comes from. Certainly, taxation last year was only 38% of the money, and the grants from other levels of governments were 39%, with other being 13 and 10% coming from reserves. So I would like to see that kind of information in the budget, and also maybe a table or something that shows where we are in relation to the grants. I know we still have our modernization grant sitting there, which I guess we have earmarked for fire communications, and then we have quite a bit left over from the phase 1 recovery funding. So it would be good to know where we stand with that. The other thing that we've done here is you know, as we've heard, I've mentioned this a few times over the last couple of years, is we really tracked down the all of the available assessment to us, because that was one of the things that was a concern. And when our new council came in, we made that a priority to make sure we were capturing all the assessment, because I think it would be really useful if at the county level we looked at all the municipalities this data is in the FIRs, and the ones that are filed anyway. There's still 2 municipalities that haven't filed their 2019 FIRs, but yeah, so looking at the assessment, in the Blue Mountains for the 3 years under, before 2018, if you look at building permits versus supplementary, we're running at 60%. The supplementary was lower than the building permits by that. We have since caught up. So at the end of 2018, on the 3 years previous, we were in a deficit situation of 241 million of missing assessment. And we've now caught that up. And over the last, if you look at the total from 2015 to today, we actually have supplementary that's in excess of our building permits by 124 million. So I think it's very important that at the county level, we make sure that all the lower tiers have done everything possible to maximize their assessment, because we're talking, you can see the effect of that when you look at new assessment growth is taking us from 4.35 to 2.18. Well, if we could maybe make that whole 4.35 go to 0 if we made sure that we actually had the proper assessment number. So I would ask that maybe staff would look at that, and because it's easy to do. Our staff has done that for me this year, and that's why I'm quoting you these numbers. That was just material that's going to be incorporated in our budget to, and we have a pretty close to 0% increase at this point before the budget goes to our 4 days of budget meetings, and sometimes things get added at that point, but we are only able to do that because we've had a huge increase in assessment over the last 2 years. It's actually over the last 2 years we've added about 700 million to the assessment. Without that, certainly we would be seeing a huge tax increase if we didn't have that assessment. So that's the main point. I mean, a budget is a budget, but I think I'd like to see more emphasis on the revenue side as well as the expenditure side.
Hey, Kevin, do you have any comment to the revenue side?
Yeah, no, and we can try as staff. We're legislated and mandated in a lot of these programs about this on the revenue side. What I mean by that is, for example, in long-term care, we have no decision on what we charge our residents. So the revenue side is what the province mandates and legislates to us now, and the same with paramedic services and social services and stuff. But I think for council's information, if we could do a recap of those programs and show you how the revenue sources work on those, the funding formulas, that's good information for councilors could have, so that we could do that and work on that. So, and if there's something that we're missing, I'm happy to look at it. That's for sure. If we can find more revenue, the better. That's for sure. But a lot of those programs are regulated what we can charge. Like even a private individual in a home that has the ability to pay that amount that's paid by per diem is legislated by the province. So we can't increase that. So. But I think it's valuable information that you as councilors should have, and we'll try to incorporate that in the budget document. In regards to assessment and working with the local treasurers, I could seek out and see if they want assistance somehow there, and see how the county could assist with that. I know some of them have done their own work on this and that are looking for all the revenue they can find as well, but I can discuss it again with them and see if they want the county in some way to take some lead on that and assist with that. I can reach out to them.
Okay. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Swerver? Is that
that answers my question, but I only have one other question, we're gonna have the committee of the whole meeting on January 29th. When will the budget be available to us? Because as usual, it's a pretty hefty document with a lot of numbers. So, you know, I want to make sure that we have it in plenty of time to have a good look at it before our committee of the whole. So when would that full budget document be available to us for review?
Kevin?
In the proposed budget timetable, we had stated we'd have that available on January 8th.
Okay, thank you.
You are taking time off, right, Kevin?
We're working on it.
Okay, well, make sure you
Mr.
do.
Warden,
Yeah,
I do see CAO Wingrove has a comment to make as well.
okay, go ahead, Madam CEO.
I'll keep this short because I think Kevin's really responded as I would have. My only thing was about the additional assessment. And, you know, some of this belongs in your individual building departments. And that's not part of the county's responsibility. I do feel a little bit like, you know, these are internal matters to each one of your municipalities. And I, you know, we can certainly offer to help, but I think your own individual circumstances are all each very unique. And my sense of it is that staff are trying their very best to stay on top of what's been a very challenging year when it comes to the building and planning departments.
So maybe if Kevin sends out a note and reaches out to the treasurers and building department, we can as well as county councilors and see if there are opportunities there before the end of the year. Thanks for that, Madam CEO. Councillor Robinson, I have next in the list.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden. Certainly my initial question has been answered, but two things. I very, very much appreciate this report and the detail on it. And if at all possible, my question here, could we, those that want it, receive a hard copy of the budget for that January 29th meeting? Food for thought at this point. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, Kevin, is that a possibility? Get a condensed hard copy or?
Yeah, that's a possibility, yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll sort of track that. Madam CEO, who do you have on the list next?
Oh, I have Councillor Hicks.
That's right. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And Kevin, thank you for this budget. I feel like you have such a difficult job trying to hit what appears to be a moving target, constantly changing. I was interested in the housing section, and I'm happy to see funds for public Wi-Fi in our housing facilities. I think that's great. I would though say we have several task forces on the go. And if I'm going to speak about housing particularly, I can't imagine that the housing task force won't come back with some sort of a recommendation around some kind of initiative around affordable housing. What, if anything, have we been doing from a budgetary perspective to anticipate, and I know it's difficult to do that because you haven't had a report yet, the deliberations are still happening, but anticipating that there may be initiatives that come from those task forces. What, if anything, have you been able to do from a budgeting perspective, Kevin?
Kevin?
That's a good question. Tough.
Anne-Marie.
Yeah, maybe Anne-Marie better to answer this. Sorry.
Okay, Anne-Marie, good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I do have a report. We have a Affordable Housing Task Force meeting on December 15th. I do have a report coming forward looking at some future opportunities that we have to develop affordable housing over the next few years. Trying to pinpoint a cost and what funding may be available is very difficult, but the report does outline the opportunities and will give the task force a chance to make some recommendations. And I'm assuming those recommendations would then be included in the budget for 2021. And I think in just moving forward from there.
Okay, follow up, Deputy Warden.
Mr. Warden, I'm really happy to hear that there would be some consideration for inclusion of an initiative in 2021. Of course, they will have to know better what those recommendations are, but I would like to know that there's some flexibility for us to take on some sort of initiative and to have that somewhat included in the 2021 budget.
Okay, thank you for that then. And Madam Clerk, are there others? I saw Councillor Millen pop up there. Is there anybody else, or is it Councillor Millen's next?
I don't see anyone else, so I do have Councillor Millen on my list.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Millen.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. In regards to the economic development proposed budget there, I note, of course, as we had agreed to consider funding for the Highway 4 corridor community transportation at what I've seen about $94,000 for the year. Will we see any kind of ridership report prior to the budget coming forward?
Kevin?
I can take that if you don't mind. Yes, Stephanie's preparing a report to bring to December 10th that will talk about a number of things, some route realignment, some ridership numbers, some future planning for the transportation state. So you will have an opportunity to kind of get the latest on the transportation front and then provide some direction to staff.
Thank you very much.
And just following up on that, Madam CEO, so the other funding for the other routes, it's funded till 2022, is that right?
Our grant funding is till March of 2023.
Oh, March of 2023. Okay, thank you for that. Follow up to that, Councillor Millen, anything from that? Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, is there anybody else wish to speak?
No, sir.
All right, well, thanks again for the great comments and from you, Director Wepler and staff and everyone else for putting that all forward to Kevin to disseminate and put into a budget. So it is moved by Councillor Patterson and second by Councillor O'Leary. Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Hearing none, that is carried. Okay.
Mr. Warden, I want to emphasize that a lot of staff help went into getting us where this number is today. So I do really want to appreciate the directors and all the managers and other support staff have gone into this. So thank you.
Well, like I say, you guys work hard and you start early, and but make sure you take some time off for the Christmas break for sure. All right, so then moving on then to other business. So this is going to be followed up with
Mr. Warden, sorry, there was one item pulled from the consent agenda by Councillor Soever. So we'll need that moved and seconded before discussion.
Yeah, and I think that was item E. Is that correct? Item E. So Councillor Soever,
Yes.
are you moving that then right now?
Yes, I'll move that.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Robinson. Okay, thank you for that, Madam Clerk. So go ahead, Councillor Soever.
Yes, I just like to, advise the other councillors that, certainly the town of Blue Mountains has had a preliminary look at the waste disposal issue, and our letter does state that our council passed a motion saying that we're not interested. We just can't justify the potential increase of, almost doubling our waste disposal costs from $186 a household to $353. And those numbers are in the tables. And, I also see that for all except for Southgate, who has a benefit of $37 a household, most of the rest of the county would be paying more, including the proponents of this initiative. They're adding quite a bit of county taxes to their taxpayers. So anyway, I just urge people to look at that and maybe start thinking about what they're doing to their ratepayers by proposing this matter.
Okay, thank you. And I know the Madam CEO is going to be bringing back a report, and I'm presuming she's going to be reaching out to all the lower tier municipalities to build some depth in that. Okay, and so any other conversation on that item? Seeing none, anybody opposed to that motion? Okay, that is carried. All right, so then moving back then to other business. And Madam CAO, and this is with regards to the Rural Ontario Municipal Association's delegation request. And I have what's put on here is moved by Councillor Desai and second by Councillor Woodbury. And do you have a verbal verbal update as well? So the floor is yours, Madam CEO.
Thanks very much. And Council, the two items that we've either all of us together or individually spoken about as potential delegations at Roma this year are regional transportation. And I think for that one, I'd probably like to receive some additional background. Certainly we had quite an extensive delegation, as did Town of the Blue Mountains, with regard to encouraging the Ministry of Transportation to undertake their planning at a more regional approach, taking a look at resolving some congestion issues on the Highway 26 corridor. So we've conveyed that information to MTO. I'm not sure if there is other information that people wanted to bring forward at this time or other corridors that people would like us to highlight. But certainly we can ask to speak with MTO again. The second topic
So just before you go on, Madam
Sure.
CEO, so if there are other thoughts, do you want county councillors to email you with some other ideas, or how would you like to handle that?
We can have a discussion right now if people have comments or ideas about that. We're working on a very short timeline. I think I have to have these requests in tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, is there any other thoughts? I know I've talked about the Highway 10 and Highway 6 corridor, along with other corridors coming into our county, and also I know with the Highway 26 and certainly the bypass to that or coming up through into our area, and the growth that has happened with regards to the Blue Mountains and surrounding areas, something I think from a regional approach. I know we talked a little bit about that back in, I think, March 12th or 14th. I can't remember when we had that meeting with the Southwestern MTO and Mid-Central MTO, along with representatives from the area. So I don't know if we could follow up from that discussion point, because we were looking at the opportunity to even having the minister come up in here into Grey County, but then the COVID hit and that sort of changed a little bit. So maybe that would be part of that request, to still maybe have the minister come up and have a little bit of a hands-on or staff to see what is happening up here and in Grey County. So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add to that. Sorry, Councillor Mackey and then Councillor Robinson.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. And I completely agree that the Highway 6 and 10 corridor needs to be reviewed. The long weekends, well, almost every weekend during the summer, both through the village of Chatsworth, where the two highways merge, at Rockford, at Springmount, those are all congested in the summertime. Some of the traffic is funneling off onto our county roads, which also need to have look at them. Some of the intersections on our county roads are becoming dangerous. So it's all part and parcel of the increased traffic that we're seeing, people wanting to get to this area because it's a beautiful tourist opportunity, but there is certainly issues with road travel. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Robinson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you, at the last, at one of the delegations, it might have been at Roma or AMO, you were gracious enough to permit me to speak to the minister when we did have the regional transportation delegation. And that what I spoke on was Highway 6 through Durham, which is Garifraxa Street, and connecting with the ministry in terms of any repairs to the roadway and having that coordinated at the local level as well. Certainly we would like to be able to plan any underground infrastructure improvements. So if at all possible, seeing this is a traveled route that is throughout Grey County, I would also like that to be included in the delegation portion, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, is there anybody else wishes to speak?
Councillor Soever.
Go ahead, Councillor Soever.
Yes, and I just to give a bit of an update, Rob, Councillor Sampson, Chair of our Transportation Committee, has been in contact with the Minister's office and is trying to get her to come up here for a tour of not only the Blue Mountains, but the rest of Grey County, because I think Highway 6 and 10 is just as important as 26. And of course, I think the other thing is there's needs to be a look at county roads and potential cost sharing, because the province really has two choices. It's to do major upgrades on those highways or direct traffic onto county roads, because people are already being directed there by Google. So maybe some electronic signs like they have in urban areas, which tells you which roads are congested and what are alternate routes, because Google already does that, and then so do many of the other apps. So we're finding that we're getting a lot of traffic on some of these county roads, especially County Road 2, as people prefer not to go through Collingwood anymore because of the congestion there. And so they come further west and then come up County Road to Highway 26. And so I think it's important that we both keep up the pressure on the minister, because, you know, certainly if she's hearing from Grey County and us, then, you know, the odds of her coming up are a lot better. And certainly she needs to see for herself, because I think the province is not going to be in good financial shape after this. And it's a lot cheaper to make some improvements to some of the secondary routes than do major highway construction projects, which they probably won't have money for in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
I just wonder also, Madam CEO, I'm sure we all recognize it and see it with the real estate, how it's just off the map. I don't know, reaching out to some of the regional real estate associations of that growth, or what's happening in the development side, maybe with our planning, I think doesn't hurt, in a sense, to show that, you know, our projection for growth up here was, you know, this, but now since COVID, we're not sure where it is. But it just seems to be a lot more people are coming here or buying here, or the real estate seems to be driving a lot of people here. So I think that's something that we need to communicate as well. And it just seems to be continue on. Just, I don't know. It's just I'm not sure where it's going to end. But is that enough information, Madam CEO?
That's very helpful. There's some of those really relevant points will help me to make a better delegation request. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Okay, next one.
And the second item that I'm bringing forward is about funding for mental health services. And whether the county is the lead for this, or whether in fact we are playing a supporting role to the municipality of Meaford. And I'm afraid that Councillor Klumpus and I hadn't had an opportunity to discuss this immediately before the meeting. But we know that there's an opportunity with Grey Bruce Health Services to really address a need in the community amongst our first responders when it comes to having access to treatment locally for operational stress injuries or PTSD. So support for resources to enable that treatment facility at the Meaford Hospital was one part of this. Also, for those of you that were part of the Hanover Owen Sound Task Force's last meeting, where we talked about mental health and addictions, one of the things that was brought forward, again from Naomi from the Grey Bruce Health Services, was the shortage of pediatric mental health beds in Grey and Bruce County. We have 2, and it simply isn't sufficient to meet the demand. And if our children are our future, it would be, I think, really important to see that they're able to access the services that they need locally. So those were a couple ideas around the mental health services. And I don't know, Councillor Klumpus, do you have any further information for me? I know you've had other conversations since we last spoke.
Councillor Klumpus.
Thanks very much, Madam CAO, and thanks for bringing this up. Yes, this is really very exciting. I am aware of a proposal in front of the minister at this moment, Minister of Mental Health, that includes and embeds in that proposal the funding for the OSI, the Occupational Stress Injury Clinic, that will be housed at the Meaford site, GBHS Meaford site. We've been working on this for quite some time under the PTSD banner, and certainly this has a huge impact and potential service for our EMS department and all of our frontline workers. It started particularly with a focus on the military, and that we have a large presence of in all of our communities actually, but particularly the base in Meaford. So this is something that we will be putting in a delegation request for to again strengthen the impact of this potential impact of funding for this program to our community. We absolutely think that it goes across Grey County. Welcome, Grey County is a partner in this. We've just decided to put in a request for and have some information about specifics from Gary Sims. So this, we will be working together on this, Kim, and
Great.
And getting, as you know, getting the request in tomorrow is the first chore, but then having an opportunity to prepare a more fulsome brief for presentation at the Roma conference, we hope.
Excellent.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, are there any other items that should be considered for delegations? I know we, in the past, Madam CEO, we talked about internet and increasing broadband, but I know that through the Western Ontario Wardens, and I know at our AMO, and I'm pretty much sure the provincial and federal governments with the different announcements certainly know that internet broadband increased speed is on everybody's radar, especially with COVID-19. So I imagine they're quite aware of that. Any other comments for delegations? Hearing none. Okay, and then Kim, you're going to do a verbal update on long-term care bed announcement.
Mr. Warden, we do just need to vote on the resolution for the delegations.
Oh, okay, I thought that was in with the verbal. Okay, sorry. Okay, is anybody opposed to that resolution? Seeing none, that was carried. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the verbal update, I guess there's no motion there, but I thought that was rolling into the same point. But go ahead, Madam CEO.
Okay, thank you. And Council, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Maybe. There we go. Okay. As promised, after last Friday's announcement, I'm going to provide an update on long-term care redevelopment. So the province provided approval of a new Grey Gables 128-bed long-term care facility last Friday, November 20th. As noted in the announcement, the project is to include a campus of care. And I did follow up with the province just to ask if they had a firm definition of campus of care. Their working definition is that a campus of care is a care model that generally envisions a single location with a range of housing from independent housing to assisted living or supportive housing, long-term care, and other service options. The province has confirmed that both Rockwood Terrace and Grey Gables projects are to be complete by December of 2025. And I did receive a letter from the province confirming the project, and I will just share that all with you right now. So if you can see that, okay, so this is when the province makes these announcements, you get two letters, one very short from the minister and then a longer, more detailed one from the ADM, and that's what this is. So from the Assistant Deputy Minister, I'm writing to provide details regarding...
It's not on the screen.
It's not on the screen. Well, that's not good at all. Let me... Okay. All right. Well, if I can't show it to you, I'm going to have to. What are you still seeing? Just the slide that was up?
Yeah, with the link that shows a link at the bottom in sort of purple.
Yeah,
or
but it doesn't show it here.
maybe you could send it out as an email or something.
I certainly can do that. I also, here, if, no, okay, I apologize, folks. If I do this, maybe let's try that.
Something up there now.
Does that work?
Yeah, just don't have a date on it, but I'm presuming that's the letter you're referring to.
That's right. There you go. Up there is November 20th. Okay. So what the province tells us in this letter is the application for the project includes the following: 62 beds that would be eligible for capital development funding, and that the 66 existing long-term care beds from the home would be ineligible for construction funding. It goes on to say that the ministry would continue with licensing review for the project, and that if all of that is successful and the conditions are met under the Act, that the process would result in a new approval to operate the 128 beds in Markdale. It goes on to say that please note that the requirement for public consultation must be met for the project before the start of construction will be approved. And public consultation in this context can take many forms. When they did the Rockwood Terrace licensing consultation, they simply posted it, and they asked us to post it at Rockwood Terrace. It was available on the province's website, and they just solicited comments from the public, and that was as far as it went. They can go as far as having an in-person public meeting if they so choose. The operator, ourselves, is eligible to receive capital development funding. However, we must execute a development agreement with the ministry within 90 days of the date of the minister's letter. We don't have a development agreement for Grey Gables yet, and I have not seen the paperwork for a development agreement for this project either. I anticipate seeing those shortly. The operator will be required to follow the construction schedule and all other requirements and conditions in the development agreement, so we will need to look at that carefully. And note that what we have right now, the approval of the application, does not constitute the license or the approval for long-term care beds. So just to, we need to be a little bit cautious here. I need to provide a sign back within 10 business days, so by the end of the month, letting the province know that we've received this information, and letting them know that we're prepared to continue to move forward. So if I stop this share, I should be able. This is way too technical for me. Now,
don't ask me to help you.
I want to share again, but so maybe what I'll just do is go back to that again. No, it's not gonna. No.
I don't know if other people are picking up on this, but you're glitching it a little bit. I don't know if it's just me. I don't know.
There. Now, can you see that PowerPoint again? The long-term care PowerPoint, is that up on the screen again?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So on to the next slide then, to give council a little bit of what we understand as far as the financial aspects of these two projects. So at this point in time, if we move forward, we're constructing 256 long-term care beds. And the information that we've been using so far suggests that at roughly $280,000 a bed, we're looking at just over $71 million worth of construction. We are eligible for a one-time development grant for the projects at $5.5 million. The construction subsidy over 25 years for the 190 beds that are eligible amounts to about $37 million. And we do have, or will have, by the end of next year, almost $8.5 million in reserve to put towards these projects. Assuming that we'll be able to borrow money from Infrastructure Ontario at about 3%, means that we'd have an annual payment for these beds around 3.3 million, and the subsidy would be just under 1.5. So that it's just important for council to recognize that the county front ends these projects. We will pay to have this construction done now before 2025. We receive a subsidy from the province as an annual amount that carries on over the 25 years. They don't provide the funding up front. So our annual repayment amount will be about 1.8 million for those beds. And right now we're putting into reserve an annual transfer that used to correspond to the debenture payment for Lee Manor at about 1.3. We will, our recommendation as staff moving forward is, we will want to be looking at potential either cost avoidance or revenue generating opportunities for these projects. We're somewhat aware that there may be operating model efficiencies available to us, either because of the balance between what they call basic beds and private beds that we're allowed to charge a little bit more for, just the layout and the footprint of the new buildings, trying to maximize the efficiency of that so that that keeps our staffing model to an appropriate level. So there are considerations there. There may be leasing revenue depending on what we build. If there's commercial space in there that can be rented, as well with the idea of having other kinds of housing on the site or affiliated with the builds. There may be non-long-term care residential space that provides lease revenue. We also have no idea at this time what the long-term funding formula might be in the future and how that might be adjusted. We talked a little bit about that earlier this year, or in this meeting, I should say. The two campuses of care idea, both the potential seniors housing and what that could look like at Durham, as well as the need to renovate the existing Grey Gables building, both of those would require additional investment and a business model. So you'll be aware that right now we have SHS and Salter Pelon are looking at the Durham property to try and decide what would make sense for that, but that's very much a work in progress. As well, and this was brought up again earlier in this meeting, staffing. Our very preliminary estimates suggest that we alone are going to require about 62 new FTEs to be able to support the additional beds. We're also aware too, when you look at what else has been approved in this area, in addition to our own 90 new beds, there are about 250 new beds from other long-term care providers, Southbridge and Owen Sound, Southampton, Meaford, Hanover. So, that health, human resources, is going to be an issue that we'll need to pay close attention to. So next steps, in order to move forward with the Grey Gables project, we're going to have to take a look at that existing building. And the work that was done a year ago with Gloss and Associates to establish what a footprint for 128 build would look like on the very limited property that we have in Markdale. We're going to have to, build that up and get a much more detailed assessment of what's possible there. And that's going to take some external resources. I'm suggesting that the time is now to establish a building committee in the new year so that we have all of you engaged in some specific discussions around this. We'll need to receive those development agreements for the two projects from the province, assess them and sign off on them. The SHS and Salter Pelon project, they're estimating that they'll have reports for us in the spring. So we want to evaluate those. And at some point, I think we'll need to bring a resource internally into Grey County as a project manager or a project lead, really to be the point person between the various consultants and ourselves, and to keep things moving forward. And this would be just similar to the role that Anne Marie played for us when we did the redevelopment of the administration building. So that's a brief update, and I'm happy to answer any questions as best I can.
Okay, well, thank you, Madam CEO, and I think it would be good if you could send that letter out that you received to councillors, and maybe this PowerPoint presentation. Madam Clerk, do we need a motion to receive this then? As it was
No, we don't. But we do have a question from Councillor O'Leary.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I guess my question is for you. And first of all, I don't want to take anything away from this announcement. This is big news, and I think we're pretty happy, and we've all been looking forward to it. The email that we received from our CAO on Friday, she said she had not received information from the province in our application, and I was upset by that remark, and I phoned Bill Walker myself, and I said, you know, I just want to know what the protocol was here. And he said that, you know, he had a conversation with the warden, and I think he said he used the word embargo, so he wanted it to be confidential. And I'll tell you the same. I'll tell you what I told Bill Walker. I said, you know, Bill, you're a good friend. You're our MPP, but you don't walk on water. I mean, if you tell me that it's confidential, and as a warden, I would say, well, I understand it's confidential, but I have to tell my CAO so we can prepare our own media release. And that didn't happen. So I guess, you know, Bill said, well, that's up to, you know, he does the same thing each time because he has to cover his butt. But if he's dealing with a mayor or a warden, you know, he does the same thing each time. So I guess my question to you is, how did this happen that we weren't prepared with a media release ourselves and just kind of missed the boat on that?
Well, I guess I'll say I was contacted Thursday night by Minister Walker about this, but he said the announcement was going to be done in Ottawa by Minister Burleson. And so I couldn't say anything because until she released that information, as you said, embargoed or however, he specifically said that I could not tell anybody. So as you get confidential information, and as you probably are aware from, and I can't speak to their protocols, but I would say that when the minister says, I can tell you, but I can't allow you to speak out until the announcement is made, I know through my sitting on AMO and my MOU agreement that I have there as well, we have very confidential information that's also shared with us that we're not allowed to share with others until it comes out to the public. So from that part, I was following the direction of when somebody says, don't tell anybody, I didn't tell anybody. I was strict, you know, we have a very good relationship with Minister Walker, and from the protocol from his office and his perspective, I don't know how on the past of protocol, but I did have a conversation with the CAO, and I said I will reach out to Mr. Walker that if we can put some protocol in place in the future, then this is something we need to have that conversation. So I did follow up with him on that and follow up that with the CAO, but I strictly followed what I was told is I couldn't tell anybody, because he also indicated to me, I did speak to him later on Saturday night, and he did say that he was very much tied up on that Friday as well with cabinet ministers. I know we had a meeting. I had a meeting at 12:30 that day with Lisa Thompson's team that we've been meeting as wardens, both in Grey and Bruce and Huron. And he wasn't even at that meeting along with Lisa Thompson because he was tied up in a cabinet minister with cabinet meeting himself. And he did converse with me that himself was tied up. So I can't say any more other than I was told not to tell anybody, which I followed through on that. So, well, this is only my own opinion, I guess, but I just don't think that's good enough. I think we need to do better. I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it again today.
We as a council, we give direction, we make decisions, but the most important people in this corporation is our staff. And I just think, you know, we've got the best senior management team, bar none, and everybody understands the word confidentiality. And I just think that should have been shared with the CAO in confidence. Rob should have had a media release ready to go when the province sent theirs out. We should have had ours out, and we'd at least look like we're all on the same team and we're in sync. And anyway, those are my comments. Thank you.
Well, all I'll say is we'll develop a protocol, but when somebody tells you you can't tell anybody, and if for the word get out to the minister and before that announcement, I will not be told, or nobody will be told again. So again, don't shoot the messenger. I was only doing what I was asked to do. So moving forward with the protocol, I think that's something that's very important. And I spoke to the CEO about that, and I spoke to Minister Walker about that as well. So thanks for those comments.
Mr. Warden, I do have Councillor Sullivan has a comment as well.
Go ahead, Councillor Sullivan.
Yes, I agree a protocol would be great to have, because, you know, in the past I've shared frustrations as well with the lack of information from SWIFT in particular. And certainly, you know, these organizations like SWIFT, we have a representative on there, and, you know, there is confidentiality in some of these things. And, you know, our representative has told us many times that, you know, can't tell us where the projects were going to be. Now we know because they've been published, but obviously he knew months and months before. So, you know, it's just, you know, we understand how these governments work. The upper tier wants to make sure that nobody steals their thunder and leaks anything. So, but a protocol would be good, and then everybody would have a clear understanding. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments to Madam CEO?
Councillor Hicks.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Deputy Warden, Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Kim, in the letter that you just referenced,
Yes.
the term campus of care.
Yes.
I don't understand our request to the province, including that language. So my question is, where did that requirement come from? I understand that the term campus of care is something that the Committee of Management is looking at, and perhaps maybe making some sort of a recommendation in the future about, but I did not understand our request to the province to include anything with respect to establishing a campus of care. That concerns me. Is that in fact one of the requirements of the funding, that we establish a campus of care? And what about the funding? Like, I mean, I just feel like, holy cow, the province is telling us that we must establish a campus of care. Help me out with that.
The application that went into the province early last December included that there was the potential to repurpose the existing Grey Gables facility. And I think that's perhaps where some of the challenges come in. I think we anticipated that there might be some follow-up discussion in this regard. That didn't happen yet, but I hope that the door is not closed to that at this point in time, because we're certainly, so the application included potentials. We've also had conversations about other things, like council will be aware, we've had conversations about behavioral support transition, etc. So we have spoken about other things, but I think they picked up on it because it was mentioned in the application. But as I say, there's been no, I haven't seen an agreement, and we certainly haven't signed off on any agreement. So at this point in time, I don't think anything's for certain until we do execute those agreements with the province.
Right. I know certainly you're quite right, Madam Clerk, that we did talk at the Committee of Management at one point about, I know certainly one of the things that I was pushing for was a specific treatment around dementia and memory care. And so I know that those ideas were sort of out there and floated, but it just strikes me that the province has made a decision for us that we are going to be establishing a campus of care. I'm not opposed to a campus of care. I just think that it's a little bit premature to tell us this is what we're doing when we haven't completed our research into the concepts as yet.
Yes.
I will remind, I think it was the summer of 2019, I'm not sure if it was July or August, the Minister of Long-Term Care did visit Grey Gables. I think you were the warden at the time, Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden, and she did have a visit of Grey Gables. I think you, myself, Mr. Walker, I'm trying to think of, I think Jennifer was there, a few others, and it certainly was discussed on her visit there. And I remember we walked out the back door there and we took a view where the new hospital was going to be, and there was some general conversations at that time, not saying they were setting things in stone, but I'm pretty sure that that concept was talked about at that time. So, all right. Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Warden, I don't see anyone else, so I think Councillor Soever has the final comment.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Swear.
Yes, and you know, I'm not really surprised the province is looking at a campus of care. I think, let's face it, we've heard many times around the council table from many of the opponents of the county expanding its long-term care system, that it's the expense, and you know that the county can't afford it. But you know, when you look at what private industry is doing, they've gone almost exclusively to a campus of care, preferably in a downtown area that's accessible with some commercial space to lease within their building. So you could have like hairdressers and coffee shops and things like that that the residents could use, and also the public to generate more revenue. So it is kind of the standard model these days. Nobody's just building pure long-term care. Even the Meaford project has associated with it, I understand, some seniors housing. And that also allows the company providing like the nursing services and the meal plans and everything to benefit from other people purchasing those services at a market cost, and makes these things attainable. So I'm not sure, you know, I think the province is just motivated. Well, we probably did mention it, as Warden McQueen says, but I would think they'd be doing this for everyone, because otherwise these counties will be digging themselves a hole that they can't get out of in the future, because the long-term care funding is just not enough to pay back the capital and operating costs of a facility without some other source of revenue.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And Mayor Kloppus, do you have a comment?
You're on mute, Barb.
Unmute me, sorry. Thanks for acknowledging me. I just wanted to let folks know that we've been going through this with our campus of care project that has been proposed. We have now separated that into two component parts, one for the long-term care build itself, which is a 2-story building to accommodate the 128 beds that obviously are expanded. The issue that we had was in terms of the seniors apartments and independent living, and the plans that were going forward had some concern from the surrounding neighbors, and it was decided that we can't hold up the long-term care facility while there are still some concerns coming about the height actually of the proposed building for the seniors residence. So yes, our proponent is looking at a campus of care model, but it's not a done deal at this point because there's still some opportunity for concern and for discussion with within the community. This may be a similar model to what may happen in terms of this new build, as if it's proposed that way. And if there's a time frame put on it as that these two projects will be completed by 2025, that's a pretty tall order that we have not even begun to think about in its entirety. I just wanted to bring that forward, that that there's a lot of discussion that has to go through in these communities adopting campus of care models that we really haven't explored to any great degree. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Lots of work ahead of us. Councillor Mackey, you're next.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. And I'm glad that we're having a preliminary discussion on campus of care. The long-term care committee did have the benefit of having a representative from Simcoe County, go over their campus of care. And I think that presentation would be really helpful to our county council. So I'm just wondering, Kim, if there's any opportunity, in the new year that we could have that presentation. It would just provide, a well-rounded synopsis of what a campus of care is, because we're going to have this discussion. I think it's only fitting that everyone really has a good sense of what a campus of care would be. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Mackey. And I know we did have that presentation. I think it was June from Simcoe County that talked about what they have for a campus of care. So is there any other?
If I may, Mr. Warden, I think it's important for council as well. Both Simcoe County and Wellington County have, done a tremendous amount of work on their pro formas. I think the numbers that they're working with and the analysis that's been done would be important information for all of you to be aware of and take a look at. They've done a ton of work, and if that helps us, it helps to inform our thinking or adjust our direction, I think that would be useful. So thank you for that, Councillor Mackey.
Okay, is there any further?
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Councillor Robinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. And through you, I am most interested in the building committee. So my question is, would this building committee be included in the report regarding committee appointments? Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
No, Kim and I are going to work over the next probably month and a half to develop some terms of reference for the building committee for long-term care. With the announcement just coming, we haven't quite got our heads wrapped around that yet. So the other committee appointment report will be coming to the December 10th meeting, and the long-term care building committee report will be coming in January.
Thank you.
Thanks for raising that. There was a building committee for the rebuild or the addition to the current building here. I know Councillor Burley is nodding his head, so I would think it'd be similar to that moving forward, but I don't want to presuppose anything. Councillor Millen, I think you were next. I saw you pop up.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to O'Leary's point, or Councillor O'Leary's point there earlier. You're right, Mr. Warden, that the notion of confidentiality needs to be well regarded and well respected. But saying that, there needs to be a very high level of trust between the political leader and the bureaucratic leader. And I think it's very disrespectful to suggest that you couldn't share that information with the senior employee of the corporation of the County of Grey. I'm disappointed to hear you say that you couldn't share it. Yes, you could. The protocol is there, absolutely, and everybody understands it. But that level of trust must be maintained. Our CAO protects the elected representatives from any undue harm, from being blindsided by items. It needs to go the other way as well, Mr. McQueen. So, or Mr. Warden rather. So I just thought I'd better share that with you. You should know that as a mayor. I'm sure you do know that as a mayor and as warden. So I think that's pretty important, and we need to maintain that and respect it very well. Thank you.
Well, thanks for your comments. And obviously this is a question of myself as being warden, but I'll give you one example. In February of 2019, the Premier came to Grey Gables and the Markdale Hospital. And again, similar, I was sworn to secrecy. I could not comment, even to my deputy mayor or staff or anybody. So again, this is something that has happened before in my level of where I am. I said to you, there will be working on a protocol. I spoke to Mr. Walker about this. I spoke to the CAO about this. But when somebody says you cannot tell anybody, I think from a protocol, I respect that, especially from my relationship to MOU. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I say moving forward, we will put work to develop a policy on that. I hear what you're saying, but I do respect the part of confidentiality, and I'm very much aware of that from my relationship for being on the MOU, on the AMO, because at one time the confidentiality was leaked and the province and AMO stopped talking for a period of time. So I take it very serious of the confidentiality, and I took it very serious at this time, and that's where I was basing my experience on. So it was not any ill or any disrespect for anybody. I spoke that, but you know, the highlight of this moving forward is that it's an exciting announcement, and I think we need to move on and certainly develop a protocol moving forward. Is there any other discussion as far as this point?
Yes, Councillor Robinson.
Go ahead, Councillor Robinson.
All I wanted to do in terms of a wrap up is say that I'm very pleased that the announcement has taken place, and that it is a benefit to residents of Grey County. So with that, I'm just saying that this is another tangible for Grey County overall. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Madam Clerk, we've had a lot of conversation about something that's not been on the floor. Should there not been a motion to the verbal?
It was noted on the agenda. It would be a verbal update, and anticipated that discussion would take place. So the discussion will be noted in the minutes. Tara has been furiously capturing the comments made, so that will be included in the minutes.
And it is also recorded as well, so it's there. Okay. I just know that you're very, very, very particular of any discussion without a motion on the floor, and I'm always following back a protocol in that sense. So, all right. Then moving on, there's no other conversations there, and certainly moving forward, we'll have lots of conversation on this in the near future. Is there any notice of motions from county councillors? Do I see him? I see Scott doing something, but I'm not sure what he's doing there. Okay, I hear none. I'm going to suggest we take a 5 or 10 minute break. We're at 11:51. We've been sitting here for 9:30. So can we come back at noon? Is that going to 12:05? What was your wish? 12:05? Okay.
Sure.
We'll come back. We'll take
yes, thank you.
We'll come back at 12:05. Thank you.
Please ensure your cameras and mics are off.
Madam Clerk, do we have everybody? Oh, I see there's a few people missing yet.
Yeah, we still are waiting for a few. And I just will note that Councillor Potter has had to leave the meeting.
Okay. Thank you for that. So we're still waiting for the deputy warden. So see an apple.
Yeah, I'm advertising local, shop local here.
Do you make apple pie, Councillor Soever?
I haven't in the past. I actually won an apple pie baking contest once. So,
Well, I think by saying that, you're going to have to bring a couple apples to county council someday. A couple apple pies when we get back.
yeah, I can do that.
Or maybe that's a
Yeah,
challenge
yeah.
to everybody. Maybe that's a challenge to everybody. Everybody has to provide pie whenever we get back. You know?
Yeah, we could start doing potlucks, and so to save money on the budget.
There you go. Well, I got my trusty lunchbox today.
Did you pack that yourself? Or,
I can't complete it.
I see. It looks pretty, organized. So I'm thinking maybe.
Yeah. My lovely wife looked after me this morning. I put a shout out for Cindy for sure. So.
We do have quorum, Mr. Warden.
Okay. All right. So we'll call this meeting back to order. I'm going to say it's 12:07. And I had 11:51, I think, when we took the recess there, Madam Clerk. Okay, so we'll move on to finish up our agenda for today's meeting. And at this time, I would like to introduce past warden, Stuart Halliday, and you have some comments from the past wardens. Welcome.
Well, thank you for asking me to join the virtual horseshoe today. It's certainly been a pleasure to see the thrust and parry of county politics. It's an honor today for me to bring greetings to the past warden, to the wardens from the past wardens. And on behalf of all past wardens, congratulations on a successful year as Grey County Warden. The warden's position is a challenging one at the very best of times. Guiding the county through this long-lasting pandemic earns you a place in the Grey County history books. You have faced countless challenges head-on. Despite the pandemic, you and County Council are moving important priorities forward, such as regional transportation, affordable housing, long-term care, and much more. Thank you for your service during this difficult year. All of the past wardens wish you every success in your future endeavors. Thank you.
Well, thank you, past warden Halliday, and appreciate your comments. And do say our best wishes to the past wardens if you are speaking to them. I know it's a different year for normally meet in September, and then also they would be present next week, but I guess they'll have to be present through the virtual.
No parties this year, but anyhow, our thoughts are with you.
Okay, thank you for that. Madam Clerk, do we get a motion for that? I don't have it on my screen for the address, or no? Okay.
No, we don't.
So at this time, as the current warden, I am going to give my closing remarks as the warden for 2020. County Council, staff, and the viewing public, it has been a privilege to serve you for the past year as the warden of Grey County. One of my highlights of my career took place on the evening of December 3rd, 2019, when I was inaugurated as the Grey County Warden for 2020. That evening was pinnacle of my political career, And I looked forward to the coming year representing the county at Grey County functions across the county and across Ontario. At our first county meeting, I introduced the concepts of having 3 separate committees: attainable, affordable housing, climate change, and reintroducing the Wardens Committee. On December 18th, the CAO, Kim Wingrove, the Director of Long-Term Care, Jennifer Cornell, and I delivered the application for 62 additional long-term care beds for Grey Gables to Minister Walker at his own sound writing office. I began the term meeting individually with county councillors to discuss their initiatives, thoughts, concerns, and get to know them and their municipality better. My intention for this year was to go to all municipalities and meet their council and staff. In January, we attended the ROMA, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association's conference in Toronto, and hosted the Grey County Hospitality Room. My wife Cindy and I rushed out to purchase supplies, and with the help of fellow councillors, we hosted a fantastic hospitality room. Over 100 different people dropped in from counties across the province, including a few ministers, socializing, networking, and even playing a competitive game of euchre. In February, business continued as usual at the County Council, and many of us attended the Ontario Good Roads Association conference, where we met with ministers, attended education sessions. The World Health Organization was talking about a coronavirus that had hit China and was slowly progressing around the world. And then there was March, when the world was glued to the television or radio, listening to the news about an approaching pandemic spreading across the globe. Life was temporarily put on hold as we tried to grasp the reality that a serious pandemic was looming. We had many meetings trying to plan how to move ahead. On March 26th at 5:02 p.m. as warden, I declared a state of emergency, which we are still in. We began emergency meetings to discuss how best to move forward and protect the public, all the while trying to process the influx of information being downloaded on us from a higher government. The province changed legislation to allow municipal governments to make changes to their procedural bylaw to enable us to conduct electronic meetings. Thanks to Heather Morrison, Rob Hatton, and our IT department, we were able to start meetings via Teams and Zoom, software some of us had never heard of before. We started moving forward with day-to-day operations of the county, but in a total different capacity, working from home and trying to stop the spread of COVID-19. We have learned many new terminologies this year, such as social distancing, flattening curve, social bubble, community spread, self-quarantine, Zoom fatigue, and second wave, which we are currently in. We all have become quite accustomed to hearing the Chief Medical Officer of Health for Grey Bruce, Dr. Ian Era, talking about COVID-19 and how to protect ourselves and our families from contracting the virus. He repeats the following mantra: wash your hands, wear a mask, watch your distance, ideally 2 meters, wear your mask correctly, avoid crowds, stay home if you're sick, avoid close contacts with those outside your household, avoid travel to areas with higher transmission, and minimize non-essential travel. And last week he added, be kind, be calm, be safe. I want to thank Dr. Ian Era for his health team for all the work they have done for Grey County, especially the past 9 months, working tirelessly to try and keep the virus out of Grey Bruce counties and keeping us up to date on the COVID cases in our communities. I also like to thank all the frontline workers, police officers, paramedics, firefighters, doctors, nurses, PSWs, those working at the long-term care homes, keeping our seniors healthy and safe, pharmacists, grocery store clerks, restaurant, gas stations, convenience stores, farmers, truckers, and so many more who continue to work, providing services to all of us during such troubling times. This year was the first year that the AMO, the Association of the Municipalities of Ontario conference, was held virtually in August. We were still able to listen into sessions, have delegations with ministers. There was a chat room and even an online trade show. The underlying common theme was increasing high-speed internet across Ontario, which we all supported. A couple of highlights from this past year was the creation of the Agriculture Advisory Committee, the introduction of the GTR, Grey Transit Route, in September. Also this year, Grey County acquired 32 acres in Durham for the redevelopment of Rockwood Terrace. This will also create opportunities to address housing needs in the area. On Friday, November 20th, Ontario's long-term care minister, Marilyn Fullerton, announced that this application for 62 additional beds for Grey Gables was approved, along with many more across Ontario. This was welcome news for our aging community to know that there will be more Grey County long-term care beds to care for our elderly in the future. We delivered the application at the beginning of my term as warden, and it's satisfying to hear that the news of acceptance just before the end of my term as warden for 2020. This was not a year that I had envisioned when I became warden on December 3rd, 2019, but together we adapted, worked through the process, and accepted the new norm. As we stated many times, together we will get through this, but it isn't over. We have to continue to lead our communities to follow the advice of Dr. Ian Era. I would like to thank Kim Wingrove, our CAO, and Grey County staff for all the work that you do every day to run the county, especially during such difficult times. The limited times I do go to the office or have gone to the office, Kim was already working there and still was there long after I left. Also, I'd like to thank you, Penny Colton, for keeping me organized and looking out for my best interests as warden. I want to thank you to my family, Grey Highlands Council and staff for supporting me in the past year. I would like to close by reading a poem by J.E. Morris of Owen Sound. And it's titled The County of Grey. If you happen to live in the County of Grey, you live in a happy, contented way. For that's where our boys grow big and strong. That's where our girls break out in song. In no other place could you live so long and love the living every day if you take a drive through the County of Grey. If you see dairy cows and herds of beef and acres of the maple leaf, if you take a drive when the leaves come loose, you'll see plenty of apples for apple juice. Apples to eat and apples for pie, for Grey is the home of the northern spy. We've built some ships to sail these, some chickens and keep some bees. We grow gardens, stock and fruit, bread and cheese in every store. Bacon and eggs, they can't be beat, for we feed our hogs on cream of wheat. We say our prayers, though none of us are millionaires. We live like the land we kill and on our own free will. And the people who live here every day are the salt of the earth up in the County of Grey. Thank you. So at this time, the warden's address was moved by Councillor Desai and Councillor Keaveney. I don't know, is there anybody opposed to the warden's address? That is carried. At this time, I will pass it over briefly to our CAO, Madam CAO.
Thanks very much, Mr. Warden. And just on behalf of staff and everyone here, I wanted to thank you for all of your efforts in this really, truly unprecedented year. I don't think anybody could have anticipated the many challenges that we faced or the decisions that would have to be made. And I do really, truly, on behalf of all of us, appreciate your efforts. You know, it's unfortunate the normal things that we do each year that have been interrupted by the pandemic. There was no banquet this year, so it was nice that Stuart was able to join us to make those remarks. As well, your ring and your pin for 2020 are on your desk, and Heather and I will present that to you after the meeting. So thank you again.
Well, thank you, Madam CEO, and I've quite enjoyed my time as warden here and working with you and others, and I'm very sincere, well, as I said, many times I come here and you're here, and many times I leave and you're still here. So thanks for you and your staff for all that you do. And it's a dedication I feel that all of us have here. And I think it's next to none. It's the best county, best province, best country in the world. And we make it better all the time. So again, thank you for that. So at this time, I gotta find my piece of paper here. I have the final motion. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And again, sincerely, I really appreciate the time for being warden, and I thank you for that. So we do have an adjournment from Councillor Burley and Councillor O'Leary. And is there anybody opposed to that? I guess not. So all of that's carried. Again, thanks everyone, and be safe. And we'll see you next week. All the best.
Thank you. Council, if any of you have questions